and welcome to a downright dreamy edition of Ben's Junk. And of course, that can mean multiple things. It could be either a really great dream, or a total nightmare, or some thoroughly mediocre thing that you've totally forgotten about by the time you wake up. And I think I can evoke all three with this. So anyway, today we're going to be taking a look at only my third synthesizer thing in all the years I've been doing this, 12, 13 years now. But yes, today we're going to take a look at the Behringer Solina string ensemble. Now, this is a reproduction of the old ARP string ensemble machines, if you will, from the mid-70s to early 80s, we'll say. Something like 74, 75 up to 80, 81, something like that. And I should note, you more than likely have heard the sound of one of these things at some point in your life. Even if you know nothing about the equipment, you have probably heard this. Maybe it was Pink Floyd, most of the Wish You Were Here album, or a good chunk of Animals as well, for that matter. Or certainly the prime era of disco in the late 70s. I'd say a solid half of all the big disco hits use one of these, at least the original version of these, in some capacity. A whole lot of pop ballads from the late 70s and even spilling a little into the early 80s used one of these things. So yeah, there's a solid 99% chance you've heard one of these at some point in your life. So anyway, of course, it's the string ensemble, but if you've ever seen anyone do a rundown of one of these, the key word is ensemble. It only starts to vaguely sound like a string section when you add stuff together. So if I played just the violin, it sounds nothing like a violin, even an old synthesizer approximation of a violin. So really what they did here was they took something you would use for like a cheap organ, and it would be an add-on to the organ, and it would be more of an effects unit for said Hammond organ or Lowry or whoever. But of course, then it became its own thing, and then it really took off in pop music, for lack of a better term. And yeah, it's that, like I said, that really fakey fake 70s string sound, that kind of mechanical and possibly stoned sounding bit of string action that you could get back then. And I have been wanting, as I mentioned, one of these for a while, or at least a good plug-in of one. So I did the archive soundtrack a few years ago. There was a cut on it called FADE, and for the outro, I wanted one of those string ensembles, but I had to settle for just whatever stock plugin I could find on my copy of Pro Tools. Yeah, it's one of those things that works really nicely as a filler. And so, yeah, if I really want to do strings, I don't play any of this stuff, violin or trumpet or any of that. So if I want an orchestral thing, if I want to do that, I would have to do virtual instruments, and I'd have to build it up one piece at a time. And I've done that before. I did that on Pavand 6.66, as it's known, on the Archive soundtrack album. So if you want to hear my attempt at building up an actual orchestra, just pick up that song somewhere on here on YouTube or on Bandcamp. But yeah, we're going to do the really fakey fake thing with this one. And I should note, before I take a cut here, this is going to be totally raw. I have seen a ton of videos on this thing on YouTube, and every single one runs it through other synthesizers. It's using all sorts of effects, and you barely get a taste of what it's like straight. So I'm going to do this totally, again, raw. I'm going to Roy Buchanan this one. If you're familiar with the late, great guitarist who did not use effects, save for the last year or two of his life. But yeah, I'm not going to be doing any patching. I'm not going to run this through anything. This is the absolute simplest setup you can possibly have with this thing. I want to see what I can coax out of this thing with just my own two bare hands here. Or maybe mittens, that might be interesting. Nonetheless, I'm getting goofy here. Let me take a cut here. I'll reset the camera so you can see the keyboard, and we'll just start giving a rundown, and then we'll ultimately do my attempt at maybe some sort of improvised jam or something on this, which probably won't be that good. This could be interesting. So as far as my monitoring goes, I've got 2 copies of this running right now. I've got it running to the field recorder and ultimately to the camcorder, plus just a pair of headphones going, for myself for monitoring, and I'm trying to talk. So this could be really awkward, even by my standards. Anyway, the signal flow is as basic as it can be for this setup. I've got just MIDI out to MIDI in, and then there's a 1/4-inch jack on the back of the machine here. So I've just got a regular old guitar cable coming out of that into the field recorder for recording purposes. But you can also power this. You can power this with a normal wall wart. You can do USB power and go straight to the computer. I believe there are firmware updates involved with this. I have not hooked this up to a computer. It's got it's modern enough. They've modernized it enough that it is functional in as am I making this, a modern studio. So Behringer got it perfectly right there, and I haven't noticed any real glitches or anything. I'm sure the sound might be a touch fatter, as it will, on an actual period string ensemble, but for the price and everything, I am absolutely not knocking it. So anyway, let's just give a rundown here. So before I get to any of the instruments, we got the tuning knob here, and it does not have that wide a range, so much so that you could kind of just set it and forget it. You stick it at unity or even just kind of close to it, and it jibes just beautifully with my tone generators, so yeah. But you can bend the notes if you want to, just a little. I'm not sure why. There's got to be some context. I haven't been able to find any real effect that I'd ever want to use just dinking around with it. But yeah, maybe you're one of those people that has a thing for 432 hertz, which I don't really understand. But anyway, I'm off track here. Anyway, moving on, we've got the low section of our ensemble, contrabass and cello, and that only works in tandem with volume bass here, this first slider. And this part is also monophonic, and it only seems to work for a little over an octave, or a little more actually if I go octave down on my controller, but as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, and of course none of these sound like they're actual instruments. So I'll kick this up. We'll just turn on the contrabass. We'll go for the lowest note here. There's our attempt at the brown note for the day. But I can't go any higher than G here. Yeah. And then it just, nothing. So cello seems to be just the same thing an octave up. Monophonic for this part of it, so each note kind of cuts itself off. So I can hold down the lowest note, I can hit another note here, but you won't hear it until I let go of the first. So anyway, let's just put both of them together here. Now, I've heard that these things were initially actually an add-on for organs, like a Hammond or a Lowry organ, and I can absolutely see that. I almost hesitate to call this synthesizer, and there might be some sort of debate to be had that I'm just not qualified to have. But at times I find myself thinking this sounds kind of halfway between some weird effect on an electric organ and maybe an organ adjacent thing like a harmonium, or an organ like an acoustic pipe organ, but the bellows are broken, that sort of thing. So yeah, we got our low end, but it doesn't really do a whole lot unless you got other stuff mixed in. But before we get to that, we'll turn all that off. We'll do our viola. Violin, which is the same thing, an octave up again. And of course, violin. And this is where it does become polyphonic. And I mean truly polyphonic. I can just mash my hand down on the whole thing and yeah, you got plenty of range. and plenty of notes to work with. We can put the two together here, and you can get that kind of cheesy sound that you'd get like on an old episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 when they try and do a music thing. So we got our horns now, trumpet and just horn, generically horn. So trumpet and our trumpet section. Now you cannot do just horn. So if I press horn here, it's gonna make both these lights come on. But it just modifies the sound a bit. All right, let's just keep trumpet. We'll put our two higher strings together. Okay, let's add in, let's modify that. Okay, it smooths it out a bit. But, you know, that ain't cutting it. How about modulation? Oh. We just hit 70s gold there, didn't we? Let's really take it over the top. Let's put the phaser in there. There we go. Nice slow phaser. All right, well, let's put a bit more of an attack on this so it rises a little more, and then we'll add some release to it. The world's most basic envelope here. Nice. All right. So let's mess with the phaser a bit here. Speed it up. And there's a second setting for the phaser. They just label it as color, and it changes the speed. So double speed, and it seems to filter it a little. Something's going on. It alters the tone a bit. But at its simplest, it's just the speed. Right, let's go back to that nice, lovely slow here. And let's add our low stuff back in. Let's do a suspended chord here. I'll add... Oh, there we go. There's your blissed out 70s sound. So with that in mind, that's kind of everything you can do with it. I'll just turn that off. You can do the basic high filler sound, which is what I was looking for. What's a good disco? G's usually a good one for disco. And I can go up, in fact, here. How high does it let me go here? Okay. There you go. That really high, pseudo-angelic Studio 54 sound. We'll put the phaser on it. There you go. Beauty. All right, I guess the only thing left for me to do here is to attempt to improvise something. So perhaps against my better judgment, I'm going to try and figure out a way to have me be able to sit and just play the keyboard and have it still be reasonably visible. And we'll just see what I can get out of this thing, which I wouldn't hold my breath for too much, but yeah, we'll just see what happens. Well, this could get interesting. I've had to adjust things so I can actually attempt to play, but I still got cables in my way, and I'm probably going to bump into the camera a bit here, but let's just see what I get here. Let's just start with something kind of stupid.